It is such an honor today to bring you Bryan McClain right here to the Warriors. Some call him Hesher, but I always say to him, I'm calling you Bryan. Bryan is an incredible colleague, friend, all around. We're going to learn all about Bryan because I think he has some things I don't even know about him. He is the host of an incredible podcast called Boiler Room. And also, he is the founder, owner of Alternate Current Radio. You can hear him daily on TNT Radio, State of the Nation, Eastern Time, 3 to 5 o'clock. I want all of you to follow Bryan. AlternateCurrentRadio.com is the website. Also, TNTRadio.live. If he decides to grace the Twitter X platform, whatever they're calling it, Bryan, today, you can follow him at Hesher Media. Happy New Year, Bryan. Welcome to the Warriors.
Happy New Year, Lynn, and I'm so pleased to be here with you on the Warriors. It's amazing. You know, you're such a amazing voice in the independent media sphere. You know, I'm such a fan of you and Lionel. You guys are just, inspirational. So I'm very happy to be here with you, and Happy New Year to you and all your viewers.
Well, thank you for those kind words, but right back at you, Mister. I want to jump right in. I want to know a little bit about Bryan McClain. What do you want to share? Anything about your childhood, growing up? The floor is yours. Whatever you want to share. We want to know about you a little bit.
Oh, that's fun. Okay, well, let's see. I come from California. Born and raised there, lived most of my life there, Northern California. Went to college at Humboldt State University and CSU Monterey Bay, and I did what was it? They came up with a strange name for my major. I thought it was just going to be computer science. I started off at Humboldt State with a very old school sort of set of computer professors. We did machine language and programming and, network stack sort of stuff. Just very, what would probably be considered archaic these days. And I really loved living in Humboldt County. It's beautiful up there. It's actually where I was born. And then I moved back there to go to college. What a wonderful place that was. I just had a great time in college up there. And as computers kind of reached the era of Windows, I was looking for some more powerful computing. I was more interested in multimedia. So I switched colleges and I went to CSU Monterey Bay. And I lived in Monterey from 1998 to 2014, 15, basically, with a break, a couple years where we lived up in the mountains in the Sierra Nevada foothills. And that was kind of in that period was sort of when I found a passion for broadcasting and news hounding. I really got into things that I would have never thought I'd been interested in, like politics, geopolitics, American politics, culture. I got really, I don't want to say inspired, but I got really sort of pissed off when I learned about eugenics, when I learned that how big pharma played into that, when I learned about how the Rockefellers affected our medical industry, our health industry, and so many other things. And then it just exploded from there. I started looking into 9/11, started looking into JFK and just, whatever the current things were, and just became very adept at analyzing through a very skeptical lens, what my friend Mark Anderson, our friend, he's been on the show State of the Nation with you and I many times. He calls it the mass media cartel. And that's a term that I've adopted because I don't believe that there are, well, let's see. Well, if I could flip that and make it a little bit more positive, I believe that it's very difficult for honest brokers to operate in the mass media.
Mhm.
So that they're in there, you get your beacons of truth here and there. But that really motivated me because I saw a lot of um, broken pieces of our culture, broken relationships, things like this. And you start to realize the longer you're in it that, the narrative management that's being done by the mass media and the politicians and, those that are keen on global governance and technocracy and all this, They, this is a machine. It's I would reference maybe Frank Herbert, who wrote Dune. Plans within plans, sort of thing. And yeah, so I just, I had, if I back up for a second, while I was going to CSU Monterey Bay, I got an internship working for the Department of Defense, and I worked at the Navy School in Monterey for 16 years. And I'd say the last half of that, I was just like a sponge, just absorbing everything I could possibly absorb from the internet, from podcasts. They weren't even called podcasts at the time, it was just live streams and stuff like this. And found all the big names along that path. Came across Alex Jones and Jeff Rentz, and even further back than that, in the very early days of the internet, was a big fan of like Project Camelot and oh gosh, oh, what was his name? Mel Fabregas from Veritas News, I think, was his channel. So I
Mhm.
just really started absorbing all this stuff. And in my last few years working for the DoD and the Navy, I was really, really into all this stuff, current events, trying to remove the propaganda from history, trying to relearn history from a perspective that's, not so government indoctrination center oriented. And eventually that job dried up during the Obama regime for me. And that was when I really just dove in full time to what we're doing right now. So it's been an interesting journey, and I met my wife Jill along the way. She goes by Spore. She's my co-host at the Boiler Room, and she deserves a lot of credit for this trajectory that I've been on also, because, Lynn, I'm sure you understand, it's very difficult
Yes.
for people that are interested in this kind of stuff, for their partners oftentimes, because it's intense. It's not happy go lucky all the time. It makes relationships volatile sometimes. So that's another thing I know that you understand. Having someone by your side who supports you in these endeavors has been huge. And I don't know that I would be here if she hadn't, punched the ticket and taken this ride with me. So yeah, that's kind of how I ended up here. And then I met Mike Ryan from TNT via my colleague Patrick Henningsen, who I've been working with for over a decade now. Great journalist, great independent journalist, 21stcenturywire.com. And I filled in for his show a couple times while he was on travel. And next thing I knew, Mike invited me to join TNT. And then, I did the Bryan McClain show for a year or so, a little less than a year. And then boom, Mike came up with the idea for State of the Nation, and he asked me if I'd be interested. And I said, absolutely. I'm going to need some smart people on my team, though. And sure enough, we've had yourself as my co-host for, what was that, 8 months, 8 months, something like that. I mean, I really,
Well,
really
almost
enjoyed that.
9. I don't want to,
Okay. It's a blur, Lynn. 2023 has been such a
it
blur.
is
I
a
got
blur.
I gotta say, this has been a real blur. The experience with you on State of the Nation was amazing. We had so many great conversations. I mean, if you're new to what Lynn does, highly recommend you go to tntradio.live and go back through the State of the Nation archives. We've done some amazing interviews, some great shows, and we continue to do that over there. And you were our guest yesterday, so I've got to hang with you 2 days in a row. It's been really fantastic. So that's sort of who I am and how I got here.
I think there's more to the story, but, anyway, you know what, Bryan McClain? I'm gonna just sort of muscle my way back into that State of the Nation, but I'm gonna leave that for a second.
All right.
I'm just gonna, leave that. At least, I'll be a guest every week or so, and we'll catch up, on things because, the Warriors, my passion is how I got here. I don't know. It called me, Bryan, with the trafficking, with issues of children, families, policies, with the federal government in
Yeah.
our beloved United States. Remember, we love our country, we don't like our government. At least that's the way I'm looking at it. Um, and those are important issues. But also, heading into 2024, I want to also focus on expanding a bit and providing other voices that have important messages that we are not hearing from that media cartel at all, that the public is actually craving, and tell me on a daily basis, I didn't know that. I didn't hear about that. Why am I not hearing about that? Um, I want to fast forward to, first of all, you were an incredible co-host with me. Uh, a
Likewise.
natural, a natural. Look, I'm like old school. I got to study up. I'm looking up the Twitter handle, the X handle, stuff like that. Um, but I think we had some really great guests. We really had some important conversations. We had 30 guests a week usually. It's a lot of guests to have.
Yeah.
I think we did a terrific job, and you continue to do that great job every single day. So I commend you. I also like what you said about Jill. Please send her our love. We just love Jill. I feel like that about my husband Lionel, because nothing ruffles his feathers, and he's like, "What? Yeah, go on. Who are you kidding? This is great."
Yeah.
And that's the cheerleading is what we need, because as you pointed out, it is difficult. Let's be realistic. All of this is difficult. Finding our way, finding our voices. Um, I'm going to even be really realistic. Making money, financing ourselves in this independent world, right?
Yeah.
Because of course we'd like to give everything away for free, and we do give a lot away for free, but we also have to figure out how to be smart and make money while we're doing it. So I really commend you for everything you're doing on a constant basis, because I know none of it's easy, but you're doing a terrific job.
Oh, thank you,
Now,
Lynn.
and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Something I don't say to a lot of people. You're doing a terrific job. Um, California. Now that sounds very idealistic. Now you're living in Texas.
Yes.
What made you get up and leave, a California boy going to school there? You go straight to Texas. What happened?
Mm. That's a great question with a multifold answer. First of all, um, had been living there for my whole life and seeing the way that it's changing. And in 2015, I think I'm going from memory here, so someone can fact check me, but SB 276 or 67. I might be a little dyslexic about that one, but there was a bill that was passed in 2015 or 16 that made it such that parents no longer had the ability to opt out of vaccines for their children. And I'm not going to go too deep into that, because YouTube tends to flag some of these things sometimes. But um, you know, that was something that I just felt was a little much, like removing a religious exemption or a medical exemption from a parent's options, with regards to having their kid be eligible to go to public school was just ridiculous to me. That was a level of medical tyranny that Spore and I were just like, no, I don't want to be in a state that is like that. Now, we don't have children, but you never know. That still could happen. And it was like, I don't want to be in a state that is going to harass me, about these things. It's just not where I want to live. And then on top of that, um, our media activities were bringing a little bit of flack into our personal lives. We started getting worse than trolls. Like we were used to trolls, but then we started having things happen in real life that just didn't feel right. You know, if you've never come home from a quick trip to the store and found that the toolbox, someone went in your house, went into your toolbox in the garage, and then laid out all the screwdrivers on your kitchen counter, and then simply left. You really must try it. Um, it will motivate you to want.
Wow.
It will motivate you to want to carry a handgun, and that's something you can't do in California. And then on top of that, lost my job along with 400 other people, and said, you know what? Let's try somewhere else. Let's try somewhere where we're allowed to exercise our Second Amendment rights for self defense, and a place where we're not going to experience such intense medical tyranny. And in the scope of things, looking back, compared to the mandates and everything that we've seen over the last 3 years, that was kind of small potatoes that we walked away from. But here in Texas, in the events of 2020 and 2021, I really felt a big difference in my level of freedom that I was walking around with compared to my friends and family in California.
Hmm. Shocking, almost like a different country, right? Being
Yeah,
being in Texas, and, I did not know, see, I love asking you a little bit about your personal life and your background because I didn't, although we worked, together and continue, I didn't know these things, but screwdrivers on the kitchen counter. I mean, it's time for just a fresh start somewhere else. I mean, that's just,
exactly.
uh,
Exactly.
not to be accepted. Um, I'll tell you what's interesting. What's interesting is, you know what I've learned, Brian? It's taken me 62 years to learn this. Everybody is so upset about the truth. Now, I know that sounds very simplistic. I know that sounds, but like it took me all this time to realize, wow, conspiracy equals truth. That word is thrown around a lot, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
what really, okay, so my whole thing, I was busy, with the children, they were little, but being here in New York City, when that 9/11 happened, Brian, I said to myself, "No, there's something not right here." And those were the days where I had like CNN on in the background to get
Yeah.
updates on disaster. No, I didn't know. I kind of accepted what was told to me. I didn't know. I wasn't really paying attention with children running around and all that. But that was my turning point where I said, no, no, a building does not fall like that. And that's where I became more invested in researching, listening, learning. Of course, my husband's always been, I think, since the time he was up on the clouds before he was born, in all these subjects, very immersed kind of thing.
He's up there
Um,
reading books, I know it.
I know, and yes, and still reading the books and still listening to lectures in different languages. I just don't know how the man does it, but I digress here with that one. Um, but I want to ask you. So now you moved to Texas. Now we get into that whole period. I don't even like to talk about that whole heading into that C period.
Mm,
Not that C
2020.
word, that
Yeah,
the other C word,
the other one.
the other dirty word.
Both bad words.
Both bad words. I put them right there together. Both disgusting bad words. Um, I want to do with you because your voice to me, you always have such a good kind of analysis where you say things that really make me stop and think when you say things. They're very deep, actually. Let's do sort of a warrior wrap up. Now, I want you to talk about some issues 2023, 2024 in America, some thoughts on things. For me, I'm just going to throw it out there right now because there are so many issues. My concerns, border and upcoming election. That's where
Yeah.
I think a lot stems from. But what are you thinking about? What's on your mind?
Well, I'm thinking a lot about both of those also, and, I'm on the edge of my seat with regards to the election, the power politics, the direction that, we're gonna head, the threats of black swan events that are now mainstream. This is all very, very interesting, and it's gonna be a difficult year to make predictions on. In 2019, I would not have predicted what 2020 was gonna look like. Um, but as soon as, March of, 2020 happened, I knew exactly what 2021 was gonna look like, and yeah, boy howdy, that was not a fun, experience, being called anti this and anti that. And, I went from being a hesitant person to an anti person to a grandma killer, for not wanting to go along with what that mass media cartel was telling us to do. I was very, very vocal about it. The Boiler Room did 178 shows in 2020, which, is about 120 more than we normally do. We were
Mhm.
um, that tenacious about analyzing the day to day, and those broadcasts were I've basically had to pull them down, mostly for a technical reason. But when I look back at them, look at the transcripts from them and whatnot, I think about how they would be parsed by AI now, parsed by, various social video streaming platforms, which we may or may not be on right now. And it's like, wow, this was, we call the boiler room the social rejects club. And we certainly got ourselves rejected socially for our take on that. Um, I think I may have lost my train of thought as to what your original question was
No,
there, Lynn.
no, I don't wanna, like, make you feel sad or anything. Look, join the club. That's all I'm gonna say about
Yeah,
join the club. It is a club I am proud to be in. I basically won't even go into, I lost friends I went to college with.
yeah.
That's it. They were never my friends in the first place, you
Yep,
know? You have Spore, you have your delightful Jill, I have my delightful Lionel, I've got my kids, that is the most important thing, that's what we have,
absolutely.
our home base. Um, but it really was, and I will admit, still eye-opening to me, Brian. Look, I always wanna hear everybody's opinion or everybody's right to speak, as long as they're not harming children, or animals, like, I don't, blacklist people. I don't even know if I'm allowed to say that word anymore, blacklist. It's not, I don't know, but I don't care. But anyway, I always just, take it in and then might present my opinion, but I don't cut people off. I don't lie about them. I don't accuse them of things. Um, it was very shocking and still is to me that people, and look where we are today, a few short years later, all of this, I'm going to call it hatred, a word I don't like, because I feel it on the streets. I see it on the streets. People report it to me.
Yeah.
Look at the way children are acting today,
Mhm.
right? Right. Well, of
Oh,
course, we could
yeah.
blame the internet for a lot of that, but okay, now let's move forward a little bit. So now, other than you're very concerned, I'm concerned too going forward. We have to keep, though, talking about this border. I see, and I mentioned this yesterday on your show, State of the Nation. I see no way out of this, Brian, any kind of anything, unless we shut this border down and build a wall.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't, there is no, oh, let's redo all the immigration policies. You talk to plenty of people. We've talked to plenty of people. I'm talking to plenty of people. It's just an invasion. It is a war on America. Would you agree with that?
100%. 100%. I mean, look back at what happened on 9/11. Tragic, awful, like you said, a catalyzing event for yourself and for so many people in so many different directions, and we were lied to, right, left, front, and center all the way through. Um, and we lost what, 2,998 people that day, thereabouts, approximately 3,000 people, and our government and NATO decided to start a multi-front war on terrorism and do things to, all over the Middle East. Look at Gaddafi, look at Libya, look at Afghanistan, disaster, Iraq, disaster. All these disastrous policies that led to so many people suffering and dying, including, many of our soldiers here from the United States. And over what? A guy in a cave that allegedly was behind this? And here we are. So okay, let's just set all that aside. I won't, I'm not going to go down the analysis of the mass media cartel's performance on that. But if we just look at the numbers and then the events that follow, it's like, okay, America attacked, 3,000 people died. Now we're going to have a war on terrorism. Now we're going to go do regime change. Now we're going to go do this. We're going to go do that. We're going to do all these things that somehow really align with something called the PNAC plan. But look that
Mhm.
up. We'll save that for another time. But fast forward to where we are right now, back to what you're just saying, 100,000 dead people, 100,000 dead people from a drug, what they're calling a drug, but as you call it, Lynn, this is a poison. This is
Mhm.
not just a drug for fun. Sure, there's people out there, unfortunately having a hard time in the streets and turning to this stuff, but it's in all of the counterfeit drugs and a large portion of the street drugs now. And people are dying accidentally who are not looking to go get high on fentanyl. They're maybe ordering some Ambien from an Instagram account that shows up in their mailbox because they're having a hard time sleeping because, life. And next thing you know, they're dead and nobody understands it. But this is this is chemical warfare.
Mhm.
This is chemical warfare happening. Uh, and it's coming across our border. It's being run and managed by terrorists that our media calls a cartel. And 100,000. And are we going to war with anybody over it? No, no. We're just gonna, continue to do our Middle East activities and, call that all just okay, right? We're gonna kind of go back to a mindset like a previous mindset in the country and, just kind of divide people up by faiths and remove all the nuance and make sure we're all at each other's throats. 100,000 dead people and on track for 100,000 a year and climbing.
And more, yeah.
I don't know what to call it other than chemical warfare.
Me
And then
too.
you add in your expertise, your swim lane, which is all the human trafficking and the human suffering and the human catastrophe that this is, because just like the people here in America that are non-drug addicts and non-combatants dying of chemical warfare, these people, many of these people that are being ushered across the border by these terrorists called a cartel are suffering also. There's a massive human rights atrocity happening here in the United States, chemical warfare leading to 100,000 annually and more dying, and then people living lives that are turned into, suffering and trauma and violence and all this stuff because they're like cattle, like sheep at the whim of uh, these uh, terrorist organizations.
You just laid it out. I really, Brian, I don't understand it. I like, I don't want to sound dumb. I really don't understand it. Well, I'm still trying to figure out the Vietnam War. I mean, I'm a lot
Yeah.
older than you are, and I was a kid during that period. But now as an adult in the last few years, I've been really going back and watching documentaries and doing a lot of reading and research, just because that made no sense to me. I'm still stuck there trying to figure that one out. That is why at the Warriors, we constantly on a daily basis just educate parents, guardians, family members, about fentanyl, about internet safety, just the basics, because it is so out of control. And I stand by when I say, Brian, the biggest human trafficker in the world is the United States government right now, complicit with, the border with Mexico and all that is going on. I stand by those facts. Okay.
Yeah, Lynn,
I don't understand it, Brian.
I don't either. I'm curious. I've been meaning to ask you. I'm glad we're on air when I get to ask you. Did you see the footage out of the airport where a citizen journalist went up to a couple of, I think they're NGO type of guys who were managing a large crowd of people, putting them on airplanes, stuff like this. It was pretty. I can't say it's shocking. We know it's happening. We expect it, but when you actually see it, when you see people involved in that government trafficking, uh, laid bare on video. It's absolutely amazing. I mean, what you just said, some people might balk at, but there's proof. There's
There's
ample
proof.
proof of this. Ample.
I mean, Brian, I don't really say anything with the Warriors or that can't be backed up. I'll pull out a study. I'll pull out this. I'll pull out facts.
Right.
I'm going to say I am a Catholic. I am disgusted with Catholic charities.
Oh
I
yeah.
was always raised to, even as a child, we worked, we collected things for them, soup cans and this and that. They're working on the border. They're getting millions and millions from our government, from our taxes, from my children's taxes, and 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 can't be trusted. They're basically just processing people.
Yeah.
And also, I was talking to somebody yesterday, Brian, and they were saying to me, how should I phrase this? So they're processing and they're just, where do you want your airplane ticket, Catholic Charities or at the border? And most of them, a lot of them say New York City because still these depressed countries they're coming from, whether it's Venezuela, wherever, Guatemala, they still think of New York City as the jewel, the place to come. So then they're just processed and sent here. Okay. I am witnessing it firsthand, what I'm seeing every day when I go outside. Okay. These people are brought here and they're dumped here. I am not seeing, forget the politics right now. I'm going to say again, forget the illegal alien aspect. I was telling you yesterday, I am still in shock about what appeared to be teenage girls and women sitting on blankets along 6th Avenue. As I told you, it used to be called Avenue of the Americas. Christmas Eve by Radio City Music Hall, all along the whole stretch there, Fox News studios, holding babies up in the air, holding them out to strangers and saying, hungry, feed us, Spanish, English. I'm hearing all these different languages and nobody there. Nobody, I don't see Catholic Charities, parading around helping these women and girls or any other people. So we know what's going on. We have to close the border. We have to build the wall.
Yeah.
That is the only thing I can think of, and continue our education and raising awareness in the media as we do. I don't know what else to say about this subject, except we have to keep talking about it. There are good people, the Border 911 group. We've had them on State of the Nation, Derek Maltz, Tom Homan, uh, a bunch of them working very hard constantly on all of this. We've had Art on State of the
Art
Nation.
Del Cueto. Yeah.
Yeah, Art Del Cueto, some other really good ones. You were down at the border,
Yep.
witnessing all of this. So we have to continue working on this. Now, let me pick your brain a little bit. What about this upcoming election? What do
Ooh.
you think? What is it going to be? What do you think is going to go on here?
I think this is going to go one of two ways. Trump has the numbers. Let's just face it. If everything was above board in an American election in 2024, he's going to win. That's just the way it is right now. Biden has done awful. Democrats are quietly quitting the Biden train, if there ever was one. And even the mass media is signaling, that they're ready to ditch him if they need to. And they've got these shadow campaigns running in the background. Obviously, gruesome nuisance, Gavin Newsom, one of the front runners of that. And according to some people, Michelle Obama, the stalking horse, also there, the combat landing that could happen if something changes. So there's all that floating around. But I would say that if the deep state has their way, they will stop at nothing to make sure that Donald Trump is not elected. And if he somehow is elected, I think that it's going to be he's going to be up against, we're all going to be up against a deep state that wants to destroy him and destroy any vestige of America First mindset, which is sad because the media has done its best to attach the concept of America First to that man. And, that's expected, I think. That's part of his branding, that's part of his campaign. It's a big part of the MAGA movement, if you will. But we saw the way that worked out in his first term. We saw the lawfare. We saw the statecraft that was used against him. And now that's being applied to Americans writ large, in the wake of J6. So I feel like if he does somehow become the president, everyone, especially he and his cabinet, are really going to need to actually drain a swamp, or at least make big efforts towards that, or it's all going to fall flat, and we're going to have another 4 years of Russia gates and all the other disgusting things that they throw out there. So, and that might be the best case scenario. Worst case scenario is this black swan event that they're threatening. And the fact, this leads back to that open border issue. The fact that we've got 2.5 on the low end to 10 million people coming in
Mhm.
annually illegally, uh, means anything and everything and anyone and everyone is already here for any sort of contingency planning. And that could be, just more of the same, or it could truly be some sort of black swan event, false flag event, or even organic event that is spurred because of our country's actions across the world in the last 20 years or so. So I don't know, Lynn. I feel like there's a good chance he will not be president because they'll just do anything to stop that. If that's really what the deep state wants, is for him to not be president, then I think it's likely that it won't happen. And that could come in any flavor. Something could happen and the election could get straight up canceled. Some people are saying that. I feel like that's a little extreme, but nothing's off the table after what we've seen in the last 3 or 4 years here, I think.
I agree with that. There's no rhyme or reason anymore. I think there's no predicting about anything.
Yeah.
Just when I think something can't be worse or something else pops up,
Yeah.
and I'll be like, wow, something like that. As far as this black swan, just last week, 17 uh, on the terror watch list that came over the border, they were captured. If that's the
Mhm.
word we're using, I'm not sure. They're processing people and letting them go, and we don't really have like the actual information. Are they really sending people back? I don't know, because anybody I work with or any of my sources, Brian, just say to me like we're just processing them.
Right.
And now San Diego has become a real, very few are talking about this. San Diego has become a real hotbed of, they're just, wherever that wall ends in San Diego, they're coming just right around it. It's right outside of Tijuana. I was reading something about this couple. They've lived there, immigrants themselves, but came here legally. And they have been here, I don't know, 30, 40 years. And they're just walking the walls at the end of their property. And the people are just camping out on their property. They cut down all their trees, these illegals, to make fires at nighttime to stay warm. I mean, it's the desert. They ripped apart their fence all along the property to again burn it to stay warm. And when they've complained and they've gone to law enforcement several times, they are told these people are allowed to stay on your property. We can't remove them. You can't do anything. So that's the kind of stuff, Brian, like I don't understand. Again, digressing a bit, but if I have to go to the corner CVS, I have to show, some kind of ID to buy the Sudafed. If
Yeah.
that's what I want to, even though I'm really not buying any Sudafed at all these days. But I'm just saying it's ridiculous. Now, I don't think the only thing we can do, the Warriors move, like, would you agree with this? I'm trying to instill in people, despite all this, what you just laid out, we still have to exercise our right to vote. I really believe we have to try. It's kind of hard knowing all this has been going on. We think it's going on. We're not sure what's happening in the future. I still encourage people, they must go out and vote, because we just had here, Brian, our city council, all 51 seats were up in New York. And guess what? Only 5% of the people voted that were eligible to vote. It used to be
Wow.
10%. Now it dropped to 5. What do you say about that? And
This
the whole voting. What do you think about encouraging people to vote? I don't want to give up on voting. What do you have to say about all of this?
Well, my dogs agree. They're very excited about this.
That's okay.
Um,
They're part of the family. They're
they are.
allowed to
They
chime in
are.
at any time.
That's my security team, so,
Of course, you need
I
that. Of
gotta
course.
I gotta let them do their thing. Um, that's a tough one because I actually have a really soft spot in my heart for those that elect to not vote. I totally get
Really?
it. I totally understand. Like, I came across, I think the site was this is so long ago, it's way in the back of my, cortex here, but, black box voting, but way back in the day, so for, like, the last 10 years, I've been pretty like, wow, this system is screwed up. And my background in IT is connected to cybersecurity, so I've got a lot of cybersecurity knowledge and experience. So I was the person that was had my butt on the line if I didn't configure a computer properly, like to government spec, right, for cybersecurity. So I know exactly what that looks like. I know what that job is. I've done that job. I've done it for over 400 computers, servers, laptops, laptops that I did the security lockdowns on that were then fielded into, somewhat mission critical environments, military environments. So I know a lot about cybersecurity. And when I started looking at the cybersecurity posture of voting machines, that really turned me off. I was like, oh boy, you know what I mean? It was such a big black pill to swallow that it made me feel that same way that many of you out there feel, like I'm not doing this. I'm not giving my consent to a government that is cheating on a government and groups of politicians at the federal and state levels that are essentially cheating, and cybersecurity professionals that are not even there. They're not even present. It's disgusting when you look. Any cybersecurity person will understand this. When you look at the security posture on those voting machines, I don't care if it's Dominion or any of the other ones. You look at some of the audits that have been done over the years, and I'm talking even before 2020. It's terrible. They have remote access turned on. What? Okay, stop right there. If I would have submitted a machine that I was locking down for accreditation and left remote access turned on, I would have got chewed out. I would have wasted the security manager's time and the reviewer's time. That's a category 1 vulnerability. And they leave these things open all over the place. They've got remote access, and then there's a whole conversation of physical security as well. And to think that our voting, the machines attached to our voting, are not being treated with the same cybersecurity vigor and rigor as machines that are going out there on aircraft carriers or in network operating centers that field, all the communications to, like, Second Fleet, something like that, is quite frightening. Like, why would you do that? How is that even allowed? So I get it. I totally get why people are thinking I'm not going to do it. But Lynn, I got to say, after spending 9 months with you on State of the Nation and the previous 7 months on the Bryan McClain show and speaking and watching this topic unfold, I now realize the importance of your local voting. Your local voting is perhaps the most important thing, because
Mhm.
that's where you can affect your school board, your city council, and your county recorder. A lot of these positions that are leveraged to do corruption. So if a local community can do that, that is a win. That's a worthy task. And as far as, like, if you're out there saying I'm not going to vote because it's a selection, not an election, I get it. Again, I get it. But there's almost a bit of fun, air quotes, fun, in going out there, doing it, and maybe being involved in a way more than just driving there, punching the card, and leaving. Like, maybe hang for an hour, maybe hang for 2 hours, maybe be a poll watcher or something like that, get involved in some
Right.
way. And if your um constituency, your area gets screwed, sorry to use the term, but if you get screwed, at least you're there to witness it. At least you're there
Mhm.
to see what happened and how that happened. And I think it's important for us as Americans to understand how these vulnerabilities are exploited. So we've learned a lot about that, and I've found it really interesting. And as someone, this may be hypocritical because I don't vote all the time. I've skipped a whole bunch of them because I've felt that way. But at this point, I feel like it is important that we get out there and do it, and that we at least understand it and go through the process so that we can at least see how we're getting screwed at the very least, and understand that, because that understanding brings context, and context
Mhm.
brings valuable action at some point. So yeah, I think people should get out there and do it, and I think they should focus on the local stuff, the stuff
Yes.
that really matters on the ground to them, to their kids, to their grandparents, or whomever, themselves. And we got to just, there's some things we can't change. There are some things we can't change. And maybe the deep state, maybe the presidency, maybe the senators are in that category. But from there down, don't get me started on Congress, but from somewhere from there
Don't get
downward.
me started on
Yeah,
Congress.
exactly. This is not a partisan argument, by the way. Lynn and I are both very critical of the conservative side, even though that
Yes.
is the one that, we find more common travelers with.
Because you know what, Brian, conservative today, all the meanings have actually changed. It means like common sense. It's like, oh, you're
Right.
pro family. Oh, you're pro like education. Oh, okay. Oh, you want parental autonomy. Oh, you're a conservative. Yeah, it just happens to fall that way. I mean, I am
Yeah.
very critical of. We are going to be doing a lot starting next month in now that I can travel a little more, during the week in Washington. First, Brian, I was like, no, they're both the same. And then I did get up one day. I had a lot of invites to go to different things. I will be February 6th speaking in front of the Senate. And
Cool.
again, well, I did it last year and it was met with blank looks, a small invited group. But what was interesting, Brian, is when I was leaving, how many people came up to me, part of this group, and whispered in my ear, "You're right. Oh, I wish I could come on your show, but I can't." Department of Justice, like, "We want to come on your show, but we're not allowed." You know, so I know I'm right,
Yeah.
like about a lot of things, or at least I'm providing reality or a different context to some part of the conversation. Again, at the Warriors, we don't take government money because I've seen a lot of groups that would be considered, okay, for lack of a better, let's just put that label conservative or, even pro life or something. They still toe the line, Brian. They're very careful, like what they say, I am critical of everybody, rightfully so, because
Hmm.
they're not doing their jobs. They're interested in going on CNN and Fox News and Newsmax and all that. And I'm sorry, that is the way I see it. They don't even know what they're voting, on. They're asking a legislative aide who could be, 23, 24 years old. These bills could be, 500, 1,000 pages. They're walking down the hallway. I didn't know, Brian, when I started working in Washington a few years back. I thought, oh, they study up. They know what they're voting on. And then I learned, oh no, when they're walking down a hallway, they're like, which way should I vote? They're asking this young person who I know did not read the 500 or 1,000 pages.
No.
So, that got me to really wake up. But I'm going to continue chipping away and putting my face in front of them and speaking my truths and giving my information, talking obviously about the border, things like that. Finish us up with what's going on with you that you want to share in the near future. Obviously, you're going to continue with all of your wonderful media platforms. Anything you can share, anything new coming up, or just plugging away, doubling down? What's happening?
Well, we're always trying to be better, leaner, meaner, stronger, faster, high speed, low drag. So we're always working on that. And over at Alternate Current Radio, we're going to be expanding that operation into 2024 and continuing to run Boiler Room live streams every Thursday night, shortly after 8 p.m. You know how I roll. That show starts when I'm ready, and that's the way that
No,
works.
no, but Spore's gonna get you on a good schedule. Like,
Oh yeah, yeah.
Spore's gonna crack that whip there, so to speak. And,
Yeah,
and
she keeps me square and on task for sure,
no, I
definitely.
know you just posted a new one. I saw it under Hesher Media on X, Twitter, which I have to listen to. I admit I have not listened to it yet, but that was just posted, from last night. Was it last
Yeah,
night?
yeah.
Okay,
That was
so I have to
last night.
listen. I'll be listening to that later for some entertainment. Okay. And also because you do make me think the subject matters, and also things we're not really hearing or have the time. Like I'm sure you're the same way. Brian, I could sit 24 hours a day, like just reading and researching and going on this site, going on that site, looking here. Not enough hours in the day, right?
No.
We have to work. Finish us up on. I like that. You're going to be expanding Boiler Room, and I love that. I will
And State
certainly
of the
be.
Nation also, with TNT, we're gonna be, out and about, we're gonna do some on the
Oh,
ground reporting.
really?
Very excited about that. We're looking at maybe going to CPAC and, a number of other events this year. So we'll be, doing a little bit more on the ground, out and about on the streets sort of thing with TNT, and State of the Nation is gonna be absolutely amazing. So stay tuned
Great.
over there. And yeah, Boiler Room, State of the Nation. Those are my my two primary things, but alternate current radio is its own animal. You know, we do the Sunday Wire over there, and we've got, like, you know, the Mystical American Patriot Society and the Oddcast and the Daily Ruckus is probably going to return at some point this year. So it's going to be a pretty exciting year. And Lynn, I think that all of our platforms collectively are going to have so much to talk about as
Mhm.
we roll into the next year. I expect January 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, or 6th, we're going to start seeing the big events start coming fast and furious again. What will they be? I don't know. Election year is going to be fun to cover, and fun and cringy and awful and stupendous all at once. So I'm really looking forward to it. And I just hope it goes our way. I really, and by our way, I'm not talking about
Right.
Trump or any politician. I'm talking about you and Lionel and me and Spore and all of you out there watching this or listening to this. I really just want our country back. I want that wall. I want to see the fentanyl stop. I want to see those deaths stop. I want to see the emergency use authorizations of this and that experimental things removed. And I'd like to see the weaponization of federal government agencies come to an end. So that's my wish list. It's a big one, Lynn.
It's
We'll see
kind of
what
a
we can do.
mouthful there, but
Yep.
you know what though? Here's the thing. It's and I know you have to go, but I could just talk to you for hours on end, and we'll do it again. I hope
Yeah,
you'll
let's
join
do it
me
again
again
for
because
sure.
I do know, as you pointed out, going into this election year and January, New Year, I'm fired up. I'm energized. I want to talk about these issues, you know, appropriately and full of facts and truths and things we know that others may not know or share. Um, I just say to people, you know, I'm focused on the warriors, obviously, policy for, you know, legislation, which is bipartisan, by the way, Brian. You know, it's supposed to
Yeah,
be everybody can get on board with kids and trafficking and things, you know, but believe it or not, a lot of people just can't. But we'll leave that for another program. I just say to people if they approach anything about politics, I'm like, well, you better off, you know, like 4 or 5, you know, 5 years ago? What
yeah.
just that. Like, I simply leave it at that. I don't know anybody, Brian, as I travel across the country that likes any of this, and I mean this. Oh, sure, there's a loon once in a while, but nobody likes what's going on. I don't, you know,
Right.
people are afraid, people are scared. They don't like this. They want more common sense. We have to get back to taking care of families, you know, our vets, our education system is lacking. The good news is, and I'm going to send you this article. I read this article last night on The Guardian about romanticism is returning. You know, the pendulum, I like to say, I used to say it to you, like the pendulum ever so slightly is slightly swinging back. And this article points out a lot of good information. And I read it quickly and then I'm like, oh, this is good for Brian and like Based Lit
Mm-hmm.
Analyzer, which is the way I
Yeah.
say his name, Based Lit
Mm-hmm.
Analyzer. So I want to send that along to you so you can look at this. But I think this is not sustainable. I think we live in a different country. We have to accept this, but we have to figure out how to make it work for us, for our families, for our futures. Um, and saying that, I want to remind everybody this holiday season, there was a report that nobody shared, the Warriors shared it, that there was a return in gift giving of books and puzzles and board games and retail sales, dolls, the Legos, Lincoln Logs. Brian, I thought that was a good sign.
They still
I
make Lincoln Logs? I
Yeah,
want some. I
I
loved
love
my
those
Lincoln
Lincoln
Logs as
Logs.
a kid. I
They
had
still make
Oh, yeah.
Lincoln Logs. They still
They're the
make Lincoln
best.
Logs.
Yeah.
And also the Legos, which for kids, you know, building and creative and different colors and that pretend aspect. So I'm gonna say going into 2024, that pendulum is swinging back ever so slightly. We're gonna be keeping an eye on all of these topics for you out there, for everybody. Bryan Hesher McClain. I know everybody calls you Hesher. I can't. I have to call you Bryan.
That's
Bryan
fine.
McClain. Thank you. I know how busy you are. You've got multiple projects going on. I'm very excited about, you know, State of the Nation, going outside, you know, man on the street or woman on the street, whatever, you know, meeting with the public more, getting those voices. And also, we should mention that TNT Radio is now also, you can see everybody on TNT Radio. It's visual as well. So I
Yeah.
think that's very exciting because I believe people are visual, so they like to see each other. So we should point that out. But Boiler Room Podcast, I'll be putting all of your information, Bryan, in the body of this video. I thank you so much. I wish you and Jill a tremendous New Year. Be safe, stay well. Thank you for taking the time today. You know what? Well, I really consider you like a top media warrior. Thank you, Bryan McClain, for joining me today here.
Thank you, Lynn. That means so much to me. I really appreciate it. Big fan. I hope that you and Lionel have a wonderful new year and an amazing 2024, no matter what happens in this crazy United States of America that we live in right now.
Thanks, Bryan. Same to you. Just be well and stay safe, and we will talk again soon.
All right.